Cool. We are live. Today is, what is it, January 31st, 2024, State of the Networks. And here in a slightly different location, we're going to see what's going on out in Indianapolis, taking care of my mom as she recovers from hip replacement surgery. So up in the up in the guest bedroom, and that's where we're going to be rocking and rolling from today. Let me see if I can sort out a couple of things. I know I had some folks who might be coming in, and I am a little bit behind on getting the right windows in here so I can see what is going on in the chat. Oh man, it's been a pretty damn busy couple days. So this is all kind of personal stuff, but whatever. There it is. Came out here on Thursday out to Indianapolis. Haven't seen a day of sunshine yet. And then what is going on is I had, so I'll put this in the middle. My mom fell the first night she came home from surgery and just cut this giant gash in her forehead. So we spent the next morning at the ER getting that stitched up and sorted out. So I've been a little bit behind on my tech geek stuff. What's up, Derek? So that's been interesting. Just started working on the VO2 grant that we talked about last week. I just started working on that today, and of course, as soon as you start working on things, like 900 things come up. So it's been super cool to see that just develop. It's weird. As soon as I started writing it, people were like, "Hey, man, you need help with it?" Like reaching out of nowhere, folks I'd talked to in a couple months. So that's kind of cool to see that. We've talked a little bit about Meshtastic on the show. That's been a super cool thing that I was doing a lot of last week. And then I think this had happened last week. Man, my weeks are blurring together. But I had the enclosure up on the roof and I was going up and down because it had my helium hotspot in it. It had it had helium hotspot and Meshtastic. And I think it's just those two things. And I left the door open because I'm going up and down and fiddling with the Meshtastic radio and going back down and getting on the computer and whatever, and left the door open when it rained. Rained on the whole thing, shorted everything out. Had to throw everything away and start over. So then I took off and left, but not before in another place taking my Helium outdoor Wi-Fi radio and getting that thing online, but not able to get it outdoors before I left. It's kind of a mad dash just as I'm leaving to get everything up and running and make sure that I'm prepped to come out here and take care of old Mumsy. So it's just sitting in my little server closet at the Paleo Treat shop, earning like 400 mobile a day or something. So the good news is that if that thing can't get a GPS lock and it's in a closet, it doesn't earn that much. And I think that's a good sign for at least some of the really basic gaming bullshit that we saw early on in the IoT. Same stuff is not flying in this Helium Mobile. So that's really good to see. Ton of other stuff going on. We just launched over on DePIN State the Huddle '01 interview, and that was super cool to see what those guys are doing in the world of basically building the infrastructure for video conferencing and everything that goes on behind it. There is also another project coming out doing a very similar thing in a slightly different way. So super cool to see how these different projects do these things in different ways and approach solving the problem through hardware, through software, through where they host, what both of them think they need as far as you need connection speed or you need file storage, you need hardware, or whatever it is. Those things are all just interesting to see what's going on in DePIN. I'm starting to get requests to come out to ETH Denver to speak and to do panel stuff. So we'll see if that goes on. If that does, then I'll see some of you guys at ETH Denver. If not, then probably won't see you there, but that'd be super cool. I know Tanny watches this every so often and we get him on. I know he's out in Denver, so would be rad to see, or yeah, they are out in Denver. Tanny's out in Denver, so that'd be super cool to get to hang out. Yeah, what else is going on? I've been jumping in the river out here. There's a river about, I think, 300 feet from where I'm sitting, so right outside Mom's house. So getting in the 40-degree river every day and spending a little bit of time there. That's been very different than San Diego weather. So it's kind of cool to see that going on and going down. But no, checking in and seeing what's going on in your guys' world. I've seen a ton of different DePIN news coming across on Twitter, and then in the Gristleking server, I ended up basically setting up one channel just for all of the announcements for the other DePIN projects feed into that one channel. So it's a great way to get the all of the information kind of at once or in one place. and just seeing a lot of folks are doing a lot of work. We're seeing DePIN really start to spin up. And I think last week we had talked about there being this, maybe we've talked about it a bunch before, not last week specifically, but like these two big things that we're all seeing in the market is that DePIN is one and AI is the other. And then I just got alerted to a third, and this may be old hat to some of you, but I think the third thing is going to be gaming. And so maybe the triumvirate that we see will be DePIN, AI, and gaming, and that will be the one killer whatever investment of 2024. I think there's going to be plenty of killer investments in 2024 that are just one of any of those that do a really good job on that. Jesus, I'm yawning a bunch. Yeah, I'm not sleeping as well as I normally do. Different bed, different setup out here, and making sure that mom's okay. Yeah, so with those three things, pretty interesting to think about what is happening at the intersection, certainly, I mean, of any of these things, certainly of DePIN, so blockchain in the real world, and then also at the intersection of blockchain and AI and the real world, and then blockchain, AI, real world, and gaming. And those three or four things, however you want to package that up in your mind, make some of these projects really worth paying attention to. So that's what's going on there. I think Paul was planning on coming on today, Paul Penalt from Disk 91. We're going to talk a little bit about ChirpStack, but I'm not sure if he's going to end up showing up or not. So I think that was a maybe on his end. I know we're still having, so the MQTT thing on that side hasn't been fixed with like a direct integration for, as far as I can tell, security and cost reasons. If you want to set up your own and stand up your own, I think that is doable, but you need a level of tech savvy that I don't have. So for right now, there's just a, HTTP to MQTT integration there that works well enough. And then the other thing that we saw come along this week, at least on the 𝐒𝐻𝐸 server, is there's not a way to see what an individual device is using for data credits. And I think that's something, that's something we've got to fix, right? If you are going to go pitch your client and you're going to run on 𝐒𝐻𝐸 or any server, or LNS, you have to be able to know how many data credits your device is using. It can't just be an account-wide thing. So something we've got to fix. I think it's one of those things that you only learn just by doing it and by having it brought up. So thanks to Mark who brought that up. Yeah, it's something like, hey, we got to make sure we fix that. I've always only just looked at the account side, the account total for DC. And that's just been like a total vanity fun thing where it's like, hey, how can I get Gristleking to be one of the top LNSs by data credit volume? And it was for a while, but I think we're getting forced down by people who are actually like building giant solutions on it. So we'll see. I think it's always fun to be super early on those things and, wade through all of the obstructions and obstacles and challenges that come with being the first or among the first to a place. And then as it gets more and more mainstream, to me, it gets a little bit less interesting. So that's what's going on there. What have you guys got going on? I'm not seeing anything pop up in the chat. It should be working pretty well, but the internet at this place is a little bit slower than the internet that I'm used to. So, and we do have the old background from Kevin. So Kevin at Flywheel Systems, this is his background. I'm running on the laptop, not on the home computer. So a couple things different that I just frankly didn't check before I got on today. Came in last minute. I've got my buddy that says if you wait to the last minute, it only takes a minute, and here we are. So that's the deal. Let me take a look through some of the DePIN news that I've seen coming in this week, and we'll do some quick commentary on it if there's anything big or useful in there. DePIN. All right, so let's see. Looks like we got Silencio's doing some raffle stuff. I don't care about raffle shit. Looks like Keenan has been doing some good stuff over on the Helium community side. We've got the new HNT wallet out, v2.6.3. So I think I'm on their beta anyway, so I'm probably have been checking that out for a while. But I don't use the Helium wallet anywhere near as much as I did. And I know this is a common complaint, but the old wallet, like the original wallet, was actually really useful for me. This wallet, it's great for voting. And I think it was a tragedy that vanilla won the vanilla versus chocolate vote, but there's not that much to do with voting. You get on there and you vote and that's it. Whereas certainly in the early days of Helium, you're checking your hotspot all the time and seeing what it was doing and seeing if the change that you just made had made a huge impact or not. And it's just really difficult to see that now. I know there's a bunch of great tools out there, Moken and Hotspotty, and what's the other one that I'm forgetting? Um, that allow you to see that, but I never get on and look at those things. I just figured the hotspots at this point aren't making enough to make it really worth it to pay a ton of attention. I am kind of bummed about it. It's funny because my home hotspot is down, and that's costing me what, maybe 12 cents a day, maybe $1 a day. I don't know. It's a pretty good, pretty well placed hotspot, and it always had done uh, in the top 10 out of all San Diego. So it's pretty good, but or top 20 out of San Diego, whatever it is. But it's not a bunch anymore. It's not like, holy shit, if I don't check this thing and get it up online, we're going to lose a couple $1,000, which is what it was in the beginning. But now away for a couple weeks and got the wife and dogs holding down the fort. So there's not much climbing on the roof that they're going to do. Let's see what else. Wingbits came out with their AMA. We got to see Axie's face. So that was cool. I've been talking to Axie a bunch on the GK server and on Wingbits. He joined the Wingbits team a while ago. It's just super cool to see them do a really good job on, doing answering questions. WeatherXM is just going hell for leather on getting ready for their token launch. I know that they've said that that's going to be mid-February at the earliest. I don't think there's any change to that. Relay is the third one. Thanks, Jay. I don't think there's any change to mid-February, and I would guess it's going to be after that. I know that they said from the beginning that's going to be the absolute earliest it'll come down the pipe. And I'd like to figure out, I don't have a great way to do this. And Max and I over at Golden Hawks have been hired by a bunch of these projects to help them with this pretty thorny problem, which is how do you help manage a community? And I've talked with Keenan about this, who's the community manager over at Helium, talked with Waveform a little bit, also another Helium community manager, talked with a couple other folks. And really what it comes down to is you're making sure that the community knows what's going on. And I think the big frustration there is a lot of people just don't read the docs. And so there's this disconnect between the docs get written, so the answers are there. People like me who like to read the docs and figure it out, and we don't have a question because the question is answered in the docs. As a great example recently on WeatherXM, someone came into their Discord, like, hey, what diameter pole do I need to mount my station on? Well, it's in the documentation on how to set up your station, and it's not picking on, I guess it is picking on that guy a little bit, but it's not like he's the only person ever to run into this thing. And so one of my questions and one of the things that I'm working on figuring out for all of these projects is how do you get the information delivered to people in a way that's okay with them without, because it's one thing to say, hey, we're just going to deliver all the information across all different platforms. We're going to do video, we're going to do writing stuff, we're going to do podcasts, we're going to do every type of media delivery system. But the flip side is that you then build an audience that's used to having things spoon-fed to them. And in the place where DePIN is, I don't think you can afford to have a spoon-fed audience. I think that is going to be a huge drag on the project in the long term. It's pretty easy in the start, and it's really exciting to start, and it's a kind of starting trap that I've seen where you get your first couple hundred, couple thousand people on board. You're really excited as a founding team, like, oh shit, these people are psyched on this. Like, I'll do everything I can to help them. So they come on and ask a question, you immediately answer it because you're the one that wrote the docs. You know exactly where it is. It's on page 158, paragraph 7, sentence 2, all those things. But if you keep doing that, you build into the community the reliance on you as a founder to do things for them that they should really be doing for themselves. So it's an interesting challenge. And part of it is just, it's like the hard learning piece is how do you let a little kid figure out that they shouldn't go in the pool? Let them fall in the pool, fish them out when they're coughing and spluttering a little bit, and then they stop going near the pool until they learn how to swim. And I'm sure someone's going to tell me about how they taught their kid how to swim at 4 weeks with this magic system, and that's cool. But just think of this in terms of sometimes the hard way of learning is the best way. And that is frustratingly in some of these projects is just not telling people where things are, not holding their hand, making them say, instead of let me ask people for help at every step of the way, I'm actually going to have to look it up. And I think that ends up building a much stronger community in the long term. But man, short term, it's really hard because they'll get on there and be pissed that no one's answering their question. And then the classic thing is they think like, oh, I'm getting rugged. It's like, no, you're not getting rugged. You're just not reading. So interesting stuff going on there, and I'm seeing that in almost every server, in almost every Discord server that I'm in almost every DePIN project that I'm in. This is not an easy problem. It's not like someone's figured it out and it's super straightforward. Some of the projects are doing a much better job than others at it, but it's not an easy problem, and definitely something to think of as if you're a founder going into starting one of these things or running one of these things, or, and I think this is probably more interesting for folks who watch this stuff or this show, is that if you want to work in DePIN, which I'm seeing more of, is one of the things you can do is just learn all about a project and become super helpful with it. I watched 𝐒𝐩𝐨𝐬𝐨𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐩 with Wingbits. So he was one of the early folks who became super helpful with the Wingbits project and ended up working with them. I've watched a bunch of people do that. I've watched Keenan do that over in Helium. I've watched Waveform do that in Helium. Certainly I did that with Helium. It happens over and over again. And so I saw that thing on this the other day. Who is the lady? 𝐒𝐩𝐨𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐩 tweets had talked about this. And I think there's a little bit of a discussion going on around like, should you work for free? And I'm definitely not advocating that as your long-term strategic plan. But for a lot of people who are coming into DePIN, this may be their second part-time job. This may be their hobby. And they come in saying like, okay, cool, I want passive income. I want to buy a thing and put it in my car, put it in my house, or put it in my office or whatever. And it just, churns out tokens. And that's cool. Some of the DePIN projects do that. But if you want to be more deeply involved, and maybe you're thinking that you might want to change your career a little bit or dip your toe in new career waters, the way to do it that is open to everyone, and I think this is, it always existed, but yeah, it always existed, but it's a lot, it seems to me a lot easier now because nobody knows about any of these projects, right? Or very few people know about any of these projects. You go to Hivemapper, you go to Demo, you go to Helium, you go to Wingbits, you go to 𝐻𝐻𝐻, you go to Huddle01, you go to WeatherXM, and they're big complex project. It's not like you can read a one-pager on it and get everything on there. Hivemapper has a funny thing where it's explained like I'm 5. They're explaining like you're 5. But you can read that and get an overview, but you won't get answers to details. And so I've always said, and my buddies have told me to shut the fuck up about this, but I've always said that like the superpower in DePIN is reading the documentation. And for whatever reason, it's out there, it's publicly available. You don't have to pay to read it in anything other than time and interest. But most people don't do it. Yeah, Jay, I'm with you. Is that you log into Discord and I just get hit with announcements all the time. And they're usually bullshit. And so there's two sides to that. Let's think about that from the user side. So you and me coming in, checking out all these projects, thinking about deploying a miner, is I don't care about every announcement that comes out. I only want the announcements that are important to me. But that brings up the flip side is on the project side, when they're trying to figure out what announcements are important to a user, how do they know? And I've got stung with this before with we make announcements and some user on a Discord is like, hey, what was it? It was, I got caught on one side or the other, but it was like, you're making too many announcements or you're not making enough announcements. And there's no, from the project side, it's really difficult to win that argument because everybody's different. And so this particular person is like, I don't need you, giving me, I think it was, I would like you to tell me every time there's something new. And I went back and said exactly the problem that Jay Wall is talking about. It's like, if we say every time something is new, we got version 1.2.7a out, and now it's 1.2.7b, and there's really no difference to the common user. The geeks will love it. They'll be like, oh my God, the difference with A and B is like the sub-gigahertz frequency on the Doppler shift and this, the 7th rate or whatever the fuck it is they talk about. They're psyched on it, but the average user who's coming on Discord is like, I don't need every announcement. I want to know basically, this is like the guiding thing here that nobody wants to say a bunch, is I want to know if my earnings are impacted. If they're not, probably don't care about it that much. That's the user perspective. That may not be my perspective. That may not be your perspective, but for the majority of users who I've seen coming on in Discords, and God knows I'm in enough Discords for these DePIN things, they basically want to know if their earnings are affected. They want to know, first, is it their fault? Second, is there something they can do ideally to earn more than they were earning before? And third, if it's not something that's their fault, and if they can't earn anything to do more, like, why isn't the team fixing it right now? Like, those are the 3 problems that you've got to deal with. And that brings up this idea that the community in a DePIN project is a business unit. That's what it is, and that's top secret consulting information right there. The community is a business unit, has to be treated as a business unit if you want your project to be successful. There's no other way around it. Is you've got to think of those folks as they are your frontline salesmen, they are saleswomen, or whatever it is, salespeople. They are your frontline deployers of the equipment. So they're the frontline troubleshooters. They're the service providers. Like they're everything that is out there. They are all your tentacles and your eyes and your ears and your nose. Like they're every sense that you have is your community, and they are your business unit. They're the one telling their neighbor about this thing. They're telling the person about the store, telling their buddy in the gym about this new thing. And there's no business on the planet outside of DePIN that treats their business unit with such, for most projects, such casual disregard. And I think it's just because it's so damn new. Is we get a lot of these projects where there's kind of this thing that gets mistaken, where a user, deployer, will come in and they'll think, oh, I'm an investor in the project. And that is a very common misconception. It's like, no, you're not an investor in the project. Like you may have invested your money in the project, but as far as being an actual investor with the privilege and responsibility and high risk, high hazard of an accredited investor, what we would think of normally as an investor, most people don't have the savvy, don't have the background, don't have the understanding to realistically call themselves an investor. And you see that because when the token price goes down or whatever it is, they lose their shit. Whereas an actual investor who that's their job, they may not be happy about it, but going down, but they know that the price goes up, the price goes down. Like over the long term, what you're most interested in is the value of the entire market going up and the value of the entire project going up. And that is never tracked on a day-to-day basis. So we get all these misconceptions in kind of DePIN as a whole. And those are the misconceptions between the project side and the deployment side. And each thinking of the other as really, I think the base problem is that each thinking of the other as being more responsible for things than they are. And this is something where you think of as, from both sides, however you want to think of it. If you're the person driving around with Demo and Hivemapper in your car and Nadix and the rest of the stuff that you can shove in your car, and what's the other one? SourceChain. I'm sure there's a bunch more. Or you're putting the stuff in your house. You're putting a Weather XM on your house. You're putting Helium on your house. You're putting whatever on your house. Helium Wi-Fi on your house. Is you feel like that those projects all have a responsibility to you to make you the most possible. But really the responsibility on those projects is to make sure it's as easy as possible for you to know how to contribute to the network. And this is the part that's the part that I help with, that 𝐒𝐩𝐨𝐬𝐨𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐩 does, Max and I do with these projects, is make sure that they are clearly communicating kind of what they're doing. And then Max's expertise inside of it is making sure that the incentive structure that's laid out is laid out in such a way as to contribute to drive contributions to improving the value of the network. So there's this really kind of problematic thing, and it's not an easy thing to solve. This isn't something that you just wave a magic wand and you're like, oh yeah, that guy over there is doing it perfectly. We're going to do it like that person there or that project there. Is it's different for every project. Is how do you set up a project so that the incentives are driving really healthy deployments that improve the value of the network? And a lot of times, like there's not an easy way to figure that out. So it's this piece where we see the common mistakes like, oh, we'll give the early adopters a lot of tokens, and people think that's wrong. However, you want to give your early adopters a really good incentive for building the network, because that's how the network gets out there. We're constantly faced with this chicken and egg piece, and that's the thing that DePIN solves. And so at this point, it's really easy to point the finger at Helium and be like, oh, they gave away too much too soon, those fools. And then you think, well, Helium started this whole big public DePIN kind of project thing. Now, there are projects out there who are doing DePIN or doing intersection of blockchain and meat space before Helium. Yeah, given. And Helium themselves has said like, hey, we weren't the first to do this, but pretty clearly, I don't know if they said this, but they certainly have the standing to say it, is we did it the first, the best. So on that side, or with that also comes, because you did it the first, the best, and really it's certainly the biggest, is you're gonna make mistakes. And some of those mistakes are like, exactly how many tokens do you give out? How does that drive specific network incentives? How do you make it so that the network that you build is durable, and that we don't get to a point where, with what we had with Helium, where almost a million gateways got sold. The max that was out there was 600,000. There was never more than 600 some odd thousand online at any one time. And now we're down to, what is it, 200,000, maybe 300,000. And I think long term we'll see 150,000 stay durably on the network. Is okay. How do you get to that spot directly? Or is there a way to get to that spot directly? Or will there always be that giant hump as there's the crazy speculation in the beginning? And then people realize that the pie stays the same size as more and more people come in, the slices get smaller and smaller. And there's, is there a better way to do that? Or do you always go through that hump? And I think that's what a lot of these projects are trying to figure out. And so you got to be really wary of any project that says, oh, we've got it figured out. We're going to do it better in Helium because Helium screwed it up. It's like, oh, they're the first ones. Of course they screwed it up. Of course they made mistakes. There's no guidebook, and they basically helped write the first part, the rough draft of the first part of the guidebook. So interesting to see what's going on there. I think I got off on a pretty wild tangent there. But I'm looking through. So Keenan's doing stuff on Helium stuff. Wingbits is pushing out. Demo's been talking about, temporary disruption in reward system earlier today, and this was on the 29th. So what is that, 2 days ago? Delay in the issuance of demo rewards. This is exactly what we were talking about earlier. I swear to God, I didn't look at that. But that's the kind of stuff that users are looking for is, why are my rewards down? Is it my fault or your fault? If it's your fault, why are you not fixing it right now? And there's a bunch of different reasons for that across all these projects. Typically, it's to do with the size of the projects. This might be the first time that so many people have had direct exposure and access to really early stage projects. And so when you think about how all this stuff is going down, this isn't what most people are used to. Most people are used to, by the time a company is big and developed, they've got a good customer service section. They understand what's going on with the troubleshooting. They've got a whole workflow for customers coming in and troubleshooting. And that's not typical of a startup. Typically, startups are small for a while. They're figuring out all the bugs at a pretty small level, because for most startups, there's not a huge incentive to help them. Most of them just have their group of investors, right? So those investors will help. And I've seen that in some of the startups I've been a part of and supported. The investors will come in and do some of the testing. They're pretty normal people. And so it's like, oh yeah, when I open my phone, this one thing doesn't work, or I swipe up and I expect this to happen. That doesn't happen. In DePIN projects, they are wildly different because of the token incentive. You don't have a group of 20 people to find all your problems. And I don't know what the number is. I'm going to guess it's somewhere around, you need 150 people actively using your system to find 90% of the problems. I'm sure someone on here will watch this and who's an engineer who's done like a bunch of UX studies, and they're like, actually the number is 217, and you need approximately 72,000 user tests over the course of 9 days to do it. But there's some number that's relatively low. 100, 150 people using your product, and you'll find 95%, 90% of the problems, whatever it is. With these DePIN projects, what we see is that you don't get the luxury of having a small group of people at first. You get the challenge of having thousands of people using your device at once. And Manos over at WeatherXM has been really good about constantly reminding his team, like, hey, we have the extraordinary luxury of having so many people help us test our devices. Let's not lose this, or let's not waste this opportunity. So, behind the WeatherXM team, which is I think less than 30 people, might be less than 25, they've got this group of folks, I think like 10 software folks. I'm not sure the numbers, but there's a bunch of people who are working on that thing all the time. And there are so many things, they're fixing, that it's this constant, like those guys could probably work in 24-hour shifts and have twice as many people and still be a little bit backed up on the tickets. And that's just that's a normal startup thing. The only thing that's abnormal is there's so many people who are on board, who are watching you, succeed and fail at the various challenges that are presented to you. And that makes the pressure on it so much harder on the Discord side. So I guess to circle back here, one of the really cool things that you can do as a user that I encourage everyone to do is, if you're getting on Discord and you see someone has a problem, is not only help them solve that problem, but help show them how to solve it themselves in the future. And typically I think Capcom did this to me. So the CEO of Helium did this to me very early on, where I was asking a question, and he put he put something like, "I found this," and a link to the doc that answered the part of the documentation that answered my question. And I thought that was about the healthiest kind of passive aggressive way to do this, where he's saying, really what he's saying is like, "Hey, you fucking knucklehead, read the docs." And then I read the docs and started reading more and more of them. I was like, oh, all of the questions that I'm seeing in Discord are answered. And that's really the genesis of the whole Gristleking thing is like, dude, I can answer these questions probably faster than the Helium team can, because they're going off and actually building like the next set. And they're leaving this breadcrumb of documentation behind them so people like me can come along and write blog posts and explain this to the rest of the world. So yeah, I think in that there is enormous opportunity, and this quote gets variously attributed to Henry Ford and to another Henry. I forget the other guy's name, but what is it? Opportunity always comes dressed in overalls and looks a lot like work, and I think that's super true here as well. So cool. All right, folks. I think we're gonna cut this one short today. I can hear Mom calling me in the background. She's got something going on with her hips, so I'll go down and take care of her. But super good to get to hang out with you for a little bit of time today. I will see you guys not next. Still, maybe next week I'll be back in the home office, up and running. I think I fly back on Tuesday, so should be good there. But good to see you. Thanks for those of you who have tuned in today and listened to the screed on user and project perspectives. I'll see you guys next week. If you have any questions in the meantime, jump in the Discord, hit the Twitter. It's the Gristleking on Twitter. Hopefully the Gristleking Discord is not that difficult to find. You can always DM me, email me, whatever, and I'll get you a link to it. So that should wrap it for today. Good to see you guys. Rock and roll. I am out.